And we're live. How's it going, Mets fans? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest Big Mets Updates live edition here, November 19th, 8:13 p.m. Eastern, because, of course, I'm 13 minutes late, and I sincerely apologize for that, everybody, but duty calls, not only with everything going on in my current life, but still under the weather as well, has not helped anything either, but we're chugging through it, as we always do, and I appreciate everyone's patience greatly watching this live, to the hundreds of you that we're going to see plenty of tonight, and to the thousands of you that will be inevitably watching this on replay. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hear a schmuck like me break down the latest of Mets land. I greatly appreciate that. But all right, all jokes aside, let's get into it, because the New York Metropolitans made a trade today, which we're going to touch on further on Jose Siri. I want to see your further reactions in the live chat right now in the comments down below to my replay viewers. How do you guys feel about landing one of the swaggiest players in the game? A little bit controversial too, that we'll get into. One of the most speed demon-esque players you could find, a true human highlight reel on the defensive end, and also led the league in strikeouts this past season. So you get a lot when it comes to Jose Siri. But we're going to start off today's show by getting into how Carlos Mendoza was snubbed by Major League Baseball and by the voters yet again. That we see he did not in fact win, but lost the NL Manager of the Year there to Pat Murphy. We're going to expand our thoughts on that. From there, we're going to get into the Juan Soto pursuit. What is the latest on that, everybody, paired with Jose Siri, and how the Jose Siri pickup actually does go a little bit in hand with Juan Soto. I touched on that earlier in my video. I will expand on that in the live show here tonight for each and every one of you amazing Mets fans chiming in live on a replay. And then we're going to cap off the show by getting into some key updates there on the qualifying offer deadline. Color me surprised. All the Mets key free agents that they threw the $21.5 million at, they said, no thanks, bud. We want a multi-year deal. We'll expand on that, and how the Mets are not protecting any players on the 40-man roster for the Rule 5 draft. There's some key prospects, or at least some former key prospects, that have since not performed too well over the past year and a half in the minor leagues that are now going to be exposed. Do I agree with all the prospects that we'll get into that are going to be exposed? Do I disagree with any of them? Because there's at least one where I do have some skepticism as to why he's made available, and I hope he's not picked up by a respective team in Major League Baseball when the Rule 5 draft comes around in a couple weeks. No less, how you doing, everybody? Thank you so much for taking the time tonight to hear your guy Wardy break down the latest of Mets land. You guys have been absolutely fantastic with your endless support all year long throughout the regular season, heading into the off season here with a consistent content. We are thriving. It's thanks to each and every one of you guys hitting that like and subscribe button, having the view count go up, and having a lot to say about our New York Metropolitans. I appreciate you guys greatly. So before we deep dive anything and everything, let's do a quick roll call for people first chiming in. How we doing, everybody, tonight? We got my man Steve, great member, D Raptor, Andres, Infinite, Will, in which it's his first time ever watching a live show, but he's been a follower for a bit. Thank you so much for chiming in, Will. We appreciate you. Hopefully you enjoy the live show tonight. Julio, how you doing? Frank, Rob, Jason, Josh, great member, Vinny DeJesus, love the name, how you doing? Vinny, going up the list, Charles, Swaggenberger, Chris Norton, longtime follower, how are you? Josh, great member, let's see, Jackson, how you doing? We got Mike Nixon, great member, longtime follower. We going up the list here. Michael, how you doing? Jay Kara, how you doing? T. Mart, how you doing? Charles Yoshima, great member with the $2 holla, says, hey Siri, let's go Mets. Let's go Mets indeed. Love the wordplay there. Hope you're doing great, Yoshima. Scott A, Manny, how you doing? Going up the list. Mike D, my man John Rossi, and John, I apologize because I realized, John, I didn't give you the proper shout out on X from a couple days ago. John was the man who actually had the prediction correct and first. I tweeted a couple days ago, what is my next video going to be that I'm going to be posting later today? And that was the day that I posted our top 5 Mets trade targets video. Check it out if you haven't already on the platform, everybody. Spent some decent time on that. I had a lot of fun breaking it down. John was the first to say right away in the comments, you know, that it's a trade video about pitchers. I'm like, buddy, were you watching me the past couple hours? Kind of freaky, kind of love it all at the same time. Happy to have you as always. Malone going up the list here. Kish, great member. Isaac Ocasio, how are you? Brandon B, how you doing? Malone, if I didn't mention him already. Snarf, how are you? Going up here even further. Let me make sure I didn't miss anyone. Jason, Vinny, Mike D, Ethan, a longtime follower. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. Please know, everybody, that if I do not get to your comment, it's not personal. We're going to have hundreds upon hundreds of Mets fans and baseball fans in general chiming in throughout the live chat. Naturally, I'm not going to be able to get to every comment, but I'm going to do my best, to the best of my abilities, to answer as many as possible throughout the course of the show while keeping this free-flowing and enjoyable for the average viewer and listener to chime in in and listen up on all the latest and Mets land. Ryan Clifford, president, how you doing, my man? Daniel Denny, Alex Munoz, thank you so much for taking the time, and everybody else, thank you. All right, guys, let's get into this one, and let's start with the snub job, which was Carlos Mendoza not winning Manager of the Year. Now, sadly, I'm not shocked by this. You know, I shouldn't be at all surprised by this, and I was texting my good buddy Giraffe Neck Mark shortly before we found out the results today of Mendoza losing to Pat Murphy and the Manager of the Year award, and he said there's not a chance Mendy's going to win. It's mainly just because of the big market aspect and knowing the dollars that the Mets have on their payroll. None of those are valid reasons at all to justify why Mendy shouldn't be the Manager of the Year, but sadly, this is how a lot of the voters are going to have their mindset. And listen, it's one thing to grind my gears, doing my best Peter Griffin impression from Family Guy, if you know, you know, when talking about Mr. Carlos Mendoza not winning Manager of the Year. It's another for this man to come in third in voting. How in God's name did Mike Schilt and Pat Murphy trump Carlos Mendoza here in the voting? Like, are you kidding me right? I know you're kidding me right now. But again, I shouldn't be surprised because when it comes to voting, when it comes to the Mets, there's pure incompetence there throughout Major League Baseball that no one should be surprised by. These effing nerds that do nothing, isolate themselves when emphasizing small market baseball clubs, never giving the big market club the benefit of the doubt unless you're named the LA Dodgers. No. When it comes to the New York Mets, oh, they didn't win it all this year, so surely they're not going to get Carlos Mendoza to win Manager of the Year. I understand playoffs has nothing to do with their voting decisions, but by God, I mean, just separate the two. Regular season alone, you're going to get a Wardy rant to start the show today, everybody, and I'm biased when I say this. I also don't give a rat's ass. I'm biased as I say this. Part of my French kiddos, you know, amazing sponsor at BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. We'll talk about here in just a little bit, folks. But in the meantime, let's look at this nonsense that you call the voting from MLB across their voters here. Pat Murphy gets 27 first place votes. Mind you, Pat Murphy is a first-year manager, just like Carlos Mendoza. I have no ill will with Pat Murphy whatsoever. He did a fantastic job for the Brewers this season. That should not be denounced whatsoever. He did a fantastic job, certainly. As you guys smash that like and subscribe on as your first chime in live and on replay, I greatly appreciate you guys for doing exactly that. Help us get to 250 to 300 likes by the end of the live show to the north of 500, 600 viewers we're going to have throughout the live show here tonight, folks. But we see, all right, 27 going in favor of Pat Murphy. So already, it's a landslide, which pisses me off naturally as a Mets fan. Then you find out that Carlos Mendoza only had 1 first place vote, only 6 second place votes, and Ollie Marmol, oh my God, Ollie Marmol is literally one of the most least likable managers in Major League Baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals. How in God's name did this man get a single vote? How did he get a single vote? Whoever decided to vote for Ollie Marmol, he needs to have all of his voting rights taken away. That's the same schmuck that votes every 4 years for the election and doesn't do any homework whatsoever and just hits boop. That's it. That's exactly how he approached the same exact things. Unbelievable. I cannot even fathom Ollie Marmol getting any vote is beyond me. Carlos Mendoza. So let's get into both the biased point of view and the somewhat unbiased point of view as to why Carlos Mendoza was absolutely robbed and was most deserving of this Manager of the Year award. I'd like to also let you guys know that out of the American League, first-year manager Stephen Vogt, who I thought was a tremendous hire at the time for the Cleveland Guardians right away, just a newly retired Stephen Vogt, wins Manager of the Year, first year, rightfully so there for the Guardians. We saw guys like Cal Quantrill as a runner-up as well there, as he's a newer manager for the Royals. I'm not Cal Quantrill, I'm butchering that actually. Why do I feel like that is a pitcher's... I could be butchering that name, but the manager, no less, of the Royals, who was actually interviewed for the Mets the past couple of years, he had himself a very respectable run for them. So congratulations to Stephen Vogt and Guardians fans. You guys deserve that 100%. But let's get into, okay, how does this make absolutely zero sense? So this is further proving why this is such a joke that we call this voting show by MLB and everyone involved. Did Pat Murphy adopt a roster as a first-year manager with a first-year GM / Pobo, which you had to build a relationship right away that you didn't have? No. Pat Murphy being on the side there for one Craig Counsell, who hilariously enough, Craig getting a massive payday bigger than anyone could have fathomed with the Chicago Cubs, Cubs don't even make playoffs. And his essential replacements, the two guys that were essentially his replacements, because he said no to the Mets, then the Mets pivoted to Mendoza, and Murphy was a replacement right away for the Brewers. Both of them had more respectable seasons by far than Craig Counsell. So that tells you all you need to know by not overly investing in a manager, especially one that was in-house made like anyone else there in Milwaukee. But let's talk about, okay, Pat Murphy, the obstacles in front of him were simply the following. Being a first-time manager and dealing with a limited Brewers payroll where you don't know what you're getting, so you're heavily relying on young player development. You're heavily relying on your pitching staff, which is strong year in and year out, thanks to the great drafting that you do, scouting, development, and everything in between. You had your GM, Matt Arnold, who you've known for years already in the Brewers organization. You're coming off of another playoff run type year for the Milwaukee Brewers as we now enter here in 2024. And surprise, the Brewers have themselves a respectable season. The Brewers were pretty much dominant from start to finish, and I like to give them credit for that, absolutely. This was not a team that at any point throughout the year didn't really feel like a playoff team. They did. Even at their lows, they were still dominating the NL Central for the vast majority of the season. But that doesn't change the fact that when we look at the adversity and the obstacles that a fellow first-time manager in Carlos Mendoza faces here, in my humble opinion, completely, and I mean completely separates himself from Murphy, Schilt, and Schilt had, I would even argue that Schilt is more deserving than Pat Murphy, because Schilt, even though he's not a first-time manager, had a run with the Padres that was so electric. Not that the Brewers didn't have a great run, but especially when handling all the big opponents there in the NL West, I thought Schilt did a great job in doing so. But here's the thing. Carlos Mendoza had an 11-game below 500 Mets team in the first half of the season, first quarter, where everyone felt like the year was already done. The media had written off the Mets completely at that point. They called the Mets yet again another LO Mets narrative, another laughingstock of a year in this organization. They called Carlos Mendoza right off the riff not fit to be manager for this New York Mets team. Mendy in his first year as manager in a big market like New York, dealing with the big spotlight, turn this Mets team around so 180. We're not just talking about making playoffs. We're talking about a Mets team that was the best in regular season from May 30th on for the remainder of the regular season. So miss me with that nonsense that the Mets did not have adversity for Carlos Mendoza to overcome. Miss me with the nonsense that, oh, he has a big payroll and he has a star shortstop. Willie Adames had over 110 RBIs this past year, but no, we're gonna disregard that, right? We're gonna disregard the fact that the Brewers were one of the better offensive teams in all the National League this past season collectively, because he had some great in-house talent that blossomed this year, including one Jackson Trio that kicked our teeth in left and right in that 3-game set in the wild card in Milwaukee. There are so many factors as to why Carlos Mendoza, in my humble opinion and the opinions of many that can separate the bias from reality, that this is a Carlos Mendoza that had such an uphill battle. Not to say that Pat Murphy couldn't have done necessarily the same thing with the Mets, but Pat Murphy was a homegrown talent that's been in the Brewers organization for years on end. This is Carlos Mendoza, who's never been here before. This is a Pobo and David Stearns who has never been here before, and yet somehow, some way, he finds himself third in the voting. Absolute nonsense. It's yet again another snub job, and this Thursday, which will likely be live for next, barring changes on, say, breaking news, for example, when Francisco Lindor inevitably loses the MVP there to Shohei Ohtani, I'm going to tell you everything as to why Lindor, in my opinion, was very deserving up until really that injury happened with him. And Ohtani's going to deserve it plenty. We understand that. That's more of a respectable debate, because Ohtani is literally a unicorn. Pat Murphy, already an in-house hire. That just doesn't sit right with me personally. I know I'm not the only fan that feels that way. I'm not going to expand on it any more than that. I'm not trying to make this an entire tangent. But my God, are you kidding me? Like, are you actually kidding me? I guess I shouldn't be surprised. When it comes to disappointment in the Mets awards-wise, it's like cheese and wine, because they pair so well together and they're so frequent, unfortunately. Isaac Ocasio with the $2 Hall says he outdid both managers, beat them both, but lost 100%. And again, if you do factor in the playoffs, which obviously you don't do for a regular season award, there is still something to make note of, beating this Brewers team and then going 2 games shy of the dance to face the Yankees in the World Series. Kind of an impressive run, if you ask me, because Mendoza had to get this team mentally fortified and figured out so night and day from what they were when Jorge Lopez threw that effing glove. It wasn't just Lindor. It wasn't just JD Martinez in that meeting. Carlos Mendoza was a factor from the start. Throughout the highs, the lows, and everything in between, he was a constant, huge wave of optimism and positivity that never wavered no matter where the Mets stood throughout the course of the season. And that's why I not only appreciate him so much, but that's why I'm further excited about what the future holds for the Mets, knowing that they will be led by a very savvy manager and Juan Carlos Mendoza. But all right, that's enough on the little Wardy rant when it comes to Carlos Mendoza. That's all I'm going to say about that. So now that we talked about Carlos Mendoza and everything in between, and guys, I sincerely apologize. Wow, I'm a schmuck for that. I realize I have the wrong template up right here, right now. Why is it that out of 400 of you live Amazing Mets fans, and no one enlightened me that the graphic needed to be changed? It's not your fault. It's mine. I'm just being a schmuck right now. But this is what the graphic was supposed to be from the start, so I apologize for that. So, all right, now you guys know what we're going to be getting into. So, now let's get into a bit on Jose Siri a bit more. I want to touch on Jose Siri now, and then from Jose Siri, we'll get into more on Juan Soto, the qualifying offer deadline, a bit there on the 40-man, and then I'll answer your questions before we wrap up the show. Roy, I can't take a breath. We never take a breath. No, I'm not slowing down unless I literally have to, like I do right now, just because I have to blow my nose out real quick. So give me 2 seconds, everybody. Alrighty, folks, let's lock back in. How you doing, everybody? Mr. Delightful, Kevin Weiss, great members, First Shaman, and I appreciate that. Let's see. OF graph. OF graphic? What are you talking about, OF graphic? No. Alright, guys, let's talk about this. Jose Siri. A lot of you guys have already seen my initial video on Jose Siri. If you haven't, highly implore you to check it out because we did a nice quick breakdown on him. But to further expand on Jose Siri, everybody, I just want by a show of hands to everyone watching live and to my replay viewers as well. How we feeling, everybody? How do you feel about the latest trade for the New York Metropolitans? The latest trade between the Rays and the New York Mets as well, which is something to make note of. Over the past half year, let's say, past 4 or 5 months, David Stearns has made 3 trades with the Tampa Bay Rays. We go back to June. The Mets traded for Phil Maton, gave up essentially nothing for him, and Maton was absolutely nails throughout the regular season for the Mets up until he absolutely floundered in postseason play. We look at Tyler Zuber, a really interesting crafty arm that the Mets acquired at the deadline. Didn't pitch a lick with the Mets at the major league level this year, but is an interesting arm that they may consider for 2025 and beyond. Then you add in Jose Siri here, who they acquired for Eric Orsi. Orsi, who is a very crafty right-hander as well, got absolutely beat up in his MLB debut in Pittsburgh, in which Mendoza should have never thrown him out in the fire. I remember that game like it was yesterday. It was one of my biggest rants on the season, I believe, with me being pissed at Mendoza, mainly because many decided to throw Orsi there in the fire after Kristen Scott was held out to dry a little bit too late, till after he really started to get rocked and probably gave up another home run. Orsi comes in, can't even get an out. It was terrible. He has like a 21 career reign, just a couple innings, unfortunately. Orsi, I'm sure, is going to become the next best thing in Tampa Bay because they're fantastic with their pitching development. But the reason why I'm not losing sleep over this is Orsi likely wasn't going to be given that opportunity nor have that potential with the Mets to the same extent that he will with a Rays team that isn't going to be having the expectations that the Mets have next season. Nor do I expect Jose Siri to get the playing time that he had with the Rays this past year that he would have with the Mets. This feels like more of a smaller sample size, very similar to Tyrone Taylor, platoon in center field based on certain pitching matchups. But what you're getting in Jose Siri is one swaggy mofo. A man whose personality that some love, some hate, and there's really no in between. But listen, if you're a Mets fan, you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. When you talk about aura that, the kids say nowadays, right? Oh my goodness, Marky V, Swaggy V, Daddy V, pause, he has aura. Francisco Eltro Alvarez, Mr. Smile, these guys have aura, they got swag, they just got a little pep in their step in a different manner. And it definitely isn't him because they're Hispanic, that's 100% true, whether you're Puerto Rican, Dominican, Venezuelan. These guys are just swaggy. They're flashy with the chains. They're flashy with, the jewelry, especially if they're wearing, the cross earrings, the dangle earrings that my man Jose will be rocking just like Alvarez. But it's also the personality. Jose Siri talks his talk for sure. And he honestly reminds me a lot of a former Tampa Bay Ray outfielder, if he was a Ray at one point, a former Milwaukee Brewer as well. You guys all know the man, Mr. Carlos Gomez is a man I think of right away when I think of that personality a little bit. As long as I'm not blanking on the name completely there, pretty sure it was Carlos Gomez, the man I was thinking of, that the Mets almost traded for and thankfully didn't, because after saying no to that trade because the medical didn't look good back in 2015 for Wilmer Flores, Wilmer then has the dramatic walk-off, and then we land this guy by the name of Yoenis Cespedes, who turned out to be pretty good in that 2015 run, if memory serves me correct. But Jose Siri has a swagger, he has the flashiness with him, and he has everything that you would want when it comes to a moxie of a player. When looking at a clubhouse fit, yes, he was disciplined twice last year for necessarily having some, crashing out, if you will. Again, another term that the kids use nowadays, basically just freaking out and, not being great in the clubhouse, but being more of an issue. I would like to preface, David Stearns has emphasized heavily that player evaluation, personalities of players, and how they fit in the clubhouse are heavy factors behind why they land players. The Mets have turned down a lot of potential player signings and trades over the past year for guys that they felt weren't the proper team and clubhouse fit. So I'm going to go on a limb and say that David Stearns knows a bit more than the average fan like you and I when it comes to evaluating Jose Siri. So for anyone saying, oh my God, we just landed clubhouse cancer, listen, bud, just like Jorge Lopez, if he acts stupid, he's out of here. You think the Mets are going to lose sleep by DFAing a guy that bats right around the Mendoza line? No. But what they're not losing sleep over, and what they are excited about as well, is a prospect to Jose Siri, and not only the pop he has behind his bat, but the great defense that's paired along with it. That is why this is such a slam dunk win of a trade for the Mets, because they just replayed Harrison Bader for $7 million less. Not that they're trying to penny pinch, but they're showing their ability to properly have quality trades, ones that you naturally aren't necessarily thinking of initially heading the offseason. Jose Siri, again, a 187 average is what the casual fan is going to look at. But when you understand why the Mets trade for Jose Siri, you don't look at the offense here. You're looking at simply the defense. The offense is a plus. The Mets want stopgaps for guys in Drew Gilbert's, among others, that they may acquire heading into the regular season, should it not be their top prospect in Gilbert blossoming at some point in the first half of the season. When we look at Jose Siri, you look at the 99th percentile in outs above average. You look at the 99th percentile in speed, literally a speed demon, which I know I'm going to be frothing at the mouth with right away. He's going to really excite me. 3 years of control with net, which never hurts for the 29-year-old, which I'm not complaining about. Then you add in as well arm strength, right around 99th percentile. The guy's got an absolute cannon from center. What was one of the Mets' biggest issues that they had on the defensive front if it wasn't for piss poor footing that we saw from Starling Marte? At times, Jesse Winker, even though he wasn't much of a liability during his time in the corner. Brandon Nimmo, every now and then, dealing with the plantar fasciitis. It was the Mets not having proper strength in that center field. Harrison Bader doesn't have a cannon. Tyrone Taylor has a respectable arm. But listen, Jose Siri just stomps on these guys left, right, and center when looking at pure athleticism there on the defensive front when evaluating center field. The offense, what's really interesting, so Jose Siri had 18 home runs and 448 plate appearances this past season in 130 games. I'd expect that sample size to be smaller with the Mets because I don't think he's going to be given nearly as much opportunity. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens. If Jose plays great and he earns his keep, awesome. Maybe we have yet to see the best of Jose Siri in his career, especially knowing that he'll be in a deeper lineup than he's ever been in his career. Let's not forget that one. I know he's a former Houston Astro, so maybe that is a fair argument, so I will bear that in mind. But still, Jose Siri as your potential number 9 hitter with Juan Soto towards the top of this lineup with Lindor, I don't think anyone's complaining there, right? He's a plate setter. You want a speed demon that can properly put down bunts, that can turn a single into a triple on the right night because these dummies trying to throw him out don't stand a chance. Jose Siri provides for you, and what we should be excited about as Mets fans, as a defensive masterclass. So think of Juan Lagares, but better. The flashiness is similar to Juan, which is why I think of him right away. Lagares, a fellow Hispanic player, too, is always known for the highlight reel catches. Not really known for the bat too much, but more so known for the defensive upside. Just think of that on steroids, without actually being on steroids, obviously, and enter one Jose Siri. Now, for the people that are wondering, why did the Mets make this move? It's as simple as this. This is your Harrison Bader replacement at $3 million valuation when his defense alone is worth more than that. The guy is a roughly 7-WAR career player when his offense has not been there. When, mind you, he's just a year removed from his 2023 season in Tampa, posting 25 home runs in just over 100 games. So to suggest that the power is in there either silly. He actually is one of the most drastic players in Major League Baseball and boom or bust. Like, when he's right, when he's hot, the guy's insane. When he's not, he's striking out like a mofo, leading the league in strikeouts, 1,000%. So again, it's very Jekyll and Hyde on the offensive front on what you're getting in someone in Jose Siri here. But at the core minimum of what you're getting here is an elite defender that checks off every box of what David Stearns wants as a short-term stopgap for one Drew Gilbert or something greater that the Mets may potentially pursue later on this offseason, if not by the trade deadline, should they have defensive woes. And I'm all for having more of a defensively minded center field, holding them down, getting those runs stolen, knowing your corner outfield is where the offensive upside comes from. Brennan in left, Juan Soto right potentially. Who's complaining? If you're complaining, I'm genuinely shocked that you're complaining. This is a rhetorical question. No one should be complaining here, in my humble opinion. D-Mac with a $5 haul says, does he potentially improve our small ball team? 100%. 100%. That's another very appealing aspect to this, because when we view small ball, so on the defensive end alone, Jose Siri robs, and I mean absolutely robs so many things from what you initially thought was going to be, oh, Jose Siri doesn't stand a chance on making that play or that catch. Oh my God, Jose Siri just made that play. He just made that catch. Jose Siri is a defensive masterclass. And then when we look on the offensive end, he does help with the fundamentals because he will be able to lay those bunts down if you need to move those runners over. Is he a big strikeout machine? Yes. So it's going to be coming down to, can he properly adjust for what the Mets are trying to have him do? And Mendoza has an emphasis where, listen, we know that you have a lot of pop in your bat, but listen, we have runners at second and third here with, we have runners on first and second with one out. We just need you to move the runners over, okay? If you're not confident that you can give us a sac fly because, say, your righty-righty matchup isn't favorable, then at least lay down a bunt for us. And that's what Jose Siri can certainly do. And knowing that he's a speed demon that he is, just, remember a couple of years ago when Starling Marte in 2022 was just literally phenomenal on getting down the line. He still had his stretches at times throughout the course of the 2024 year, which was an overall bounce back year for the veteran Marte. But laying down those sac bunts there, and then bolting or those little infield singles, getting down to first. Siri, again, does laps around Marte at this point in his career. He's a speed demon. I really like the potential of him being a 20 to 25, north of a 30 stolen bag guy, depending on the opportunity you give him. Because mind you, if you don't start Siri in a game and you have him as a late game replacement, you have the upside of not only defense, but speed here. That's a big thing. You look at the pinch run ability that the Mets, I feel, didn't emphasize enough at times throughout the course of the regular season, where why do we have JD Martinez running here? It doesn't make any sense. Now, all those endless times that the Mets defer to a slightly above average runner in Harrison Bader. They just upgraded that slightly average runner in Harrison Bader to quite literally the fastest man in Major League Baseball in the 99th percentile. That's a drastic jump. So instead of us being frustrated and slamming our hats as Harrison Bader is out trying to like a single to a double like the schmuck that he was at points throughout the year, he gave us some clutch hits. I appreciate Harrison. I wish him the best with his future endeavors. But let's call it what it is. He had some really boneheaded base running decisions there. Jose Siri, he ain't going to be as boneheaded. Why? Because he has the speed to back it up. It won't be for a lack of effort there whatsoever. So Jose Siri, simply put, I really, really like this acquisition for the Mets for what it is. For anyone saying, oh my God, Wardy, you're glazing this guy right now. He's not even a Mendoza type hitter on the line, I should say, of 200 this past season. Why do you care so much? I care because David Stearns cares. I care because David Stearns is the smartest man in the room. I care because David Stearns led the Mets to 2 games shy of the World Series in a so-called punt year. If you don't care about the moves small and big, I feel like you genuinely aren't paying attention nor care genuinely as a Mets fan. Because all these moves, little and big, add to something greater. Even if Jose Siri ends up looking god-awful in spring training, the Mets get someone to blossom for the center field that we never would have thought of, and Siri just cracks the team out of camp and he's DFA in the first month. I don't care. You want to know why? Because I have faith in our present baseball operations. My God, does it feel so great to say that for a change, right? I mean, we haven't had that confidence too much when we've evaluated our GMs or our Pobos and even our managers in recent years beyond, say, a year or so of Buck Showalter. This changes the dynamic of things. You not only bring in an elite defender, a speed demon who has a fantastic arm and center, you also bring in a personality there that's going to pair with fellow Hispanic players that I think is going to be smooth in this clubhouse. Because there's one thing that you really have to separate between the Rays and the Mets. It's how they are ran organizationally. This is not a slight at all for one Kevin Cash. I'd like to make that clear. He's a fantastic manager, but there's a lack of proper guidance in that clubhouse in Tampa Bay, which is what led to the demise of guys in Jose Siri throughout the course of the year, which is what led into him with guys like Randy Rosarena, a fan favorite, to really floundering as much as he did in the first half and then being traded. These things go in hand because of the clubhouse nature. There was no true leader in that clubhouse. Everyone was kind of doing it as they went, as a younger blossoming team there with the Tampa Bay Rays, who were such an analytically involved organization. Enter the Mets, who have their captain in Francisco Lindor, who's Mr. No Nonsense. Enter the nicest guy in Major League Baseball, and Brandon Nimmo. Enter potentially Juan Soto, who I understand did go back and forth with Jose Siri throughout the course of the year last year between the Rays and the Yankees, to high-powered personalities. I'm certainly going to lay it all out there on the field. I firmly believe that they're going to bode well as teammates should have happened, though. And that's the biggest thing here. Anyone that's concerned on the personality, why would you think for even a second that Stearns would, A, go out of his way to make this trade, and B, continue to let that leash go on and continue to do your walk that is having Jose Siri on the roster if he's going to be a clubhouse cancer? Well, there's just so many common sense reasons as to why you need to remember this is not 2019 Roy Van Wagenen and Wilpons. This is about to be 2025 New York Mets, David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, and Steve Cohen. So that's what I'll leave you with, guys, on the Jose Siri front there. Before I do, though, just a couple more things I'd like to show. Some Jose Siri pimp jobs, just absolute nukes. Again, he might not even hit the Mendoza line this past year, but no one is going to pimp a home run better than Jose Siri. Again, and this is where kind of you try to balance out between the old heads of baseball fans and the newer ones. And this is not to slight my more seasoned Mets fans out there, because I know you guys are great. You really are. But I know that a lot of the older fans have a tendency to be like, oh, I hate it when this guy's going to bat flip. I'm going to yell at that cloud, just like the Simpsons clip, if you know, you know. In the case of Jose Siri, how do you not get excited when you just see guys pimp that shit the way that he does? How does that not get you a little bit of a tickle in your tummy, a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like butterflies in your stomach? Like, it feels good. I love seeing my players have moxie, have aura, give a shit, both for good and bad reasons at times. Same way Jesse Winker is everyone's least favorite player when you're facing Jesse Winker, but he's your favorite player when he's on your roster. Just don't tell the Milwaukee Brewers that. This is a very similar scenario of a guy that talks the talk, tries to walk the walk. We saw how well it worked with Jesse Winker. We've seen it work with other players. How will it work with Jose Siri? We have yet to find out. But in the interim, what we know is that this was a nice, savvy move by David Stearns to give up literally nothing for something of potential quality on both the defensive front and a bat that might supersede expectations that you initially had heading into the season. If Jose Siri is given a better sample size in, say, platoon situations, mainly facing, say, lefty pitching, if he fares better there, or against right-hand pitching, we could see Jose Siri put up a far more respectable hitting average north of, say, 230 to 250 plus, and a more limited sample size, a higher on-base percentage, strong on the stolen bags, going gap to gap with home runs, and driving in a solid amount of runs, knowing that the depth he has ahead of him in the lineup, and knowing that because of how deep the Mets lineup will inevitably be for 2025, he's going to see a lot more pitches to hit. Is he going to strike out like a mofo still? 100%. You should expect that. Doesn't change the fact that for a number 9 hitter, I think the Mets did very, very well, all things considered, for what they were initially looking for and one Jose Siri. And before we transition now to talk about Mr. Juan Soto, because I got a lot to say on the big Juan, the only Juan Soto. Before we get to him, though, everybody, let's just take a further look here as I expanded on in my video earlier today. Again, 99th percentile in speed there per Baseball Savant, 97th in arm strength, 63rd in arm value, 99th in range and outs above average, 32nd percentile in walk percentage. So honestly, below league average, but could be a lot worse, because what is a lot worse is in the first percentile, whip percentage, K percentage, squared up percentage, 12th percentile there in chase percentage, 2nd percentile in expected batting average. The guy couldn't hit a lick to save his life last year on the contact front. We know that. But when you start to understand that the Mets acquired Jose Siri for the defense, and then you can add in, okay, yes, he has offensive pop and upside there and limited sample sizes, that makes it easier to stomach and to understand why the Mets made the move that they did here. Your buddy Baerga was wrong once again. Well, thankfully, Juan, Carlos Baerga is not my buddy. And secondly, I called out Carlos Baerga and said how he's been both right and wrong in the recent offseason. So unless you missed the previous content where we always emphasize how Baerga was wrong and Hector Neris going to the Yankees last offseason, he was wrong and Freddie Freeman going to the Toronto Blue Jays instead of LA a couple years ago, among other things, I don't know what else to tell you, because we've touched on that to a great degree. Any fan taking Carlos Baerga's word for more than pretty much face value right now, when it's since been refuted by John Heyman in the New York Post, saying that there has been no formal offers made from what he's aware of. I know that that might not only mean too much. Heyman is still more connected than Baerga, that we know. And secondly, you're a dummy for buying in completely on Baerga to begin with, because if you follow Carlos Baerga each and every offseason, which I have for 3 years now, you know that he hasn't hit the mark on everything. But some people have ran with it and said, breaking, Mets have contract offer in place already. Mets gave official, the reason why I said Mets already offer contract with a question mark is because it's a genuine question. We don't know. It's just rumblings going on. And it's nothing more than that until we have something to prove otherwise. But as we see here, 89th percentile base running value. The guy's fantastic on the bags. 98th percentile in fielding run value. First percentile in batting run value. So again, feast or famine is what we got here in Jose Siri. Welcome to Queens, my friend. We're happy to have you, and we're excited to see what you can bring to the New York Metropolitans. All right, guys. We talked about Jose Siri. Let's talk now about Mr. Juan Soto, because there's a lot on Juan Soto that I want to share with each and every one of you. DMAC, thank you for that donation earlier. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything else in the chat. You guys are absolutely amazing, as you always are. Isaac Kakazio, thank you for the donation as well. To anyone that donates, thank you so much in advance, everybody. Come on, wait, Juan. No, the only clown here is you, my friend. If you just watch the content, you know that not for a second I ever said that, oh, the Mets for certain put this offer in. If they did, great. That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. But no, separate the two, my friend. Go back and watch the videos, and you'll come to a reality that you are wrong. And that's okay. We're not all right. I'm wrong every single day of the week about different stuff. Same way that I am also right, however, about saying that I greatly appreciate every single one of you guys chiming in live on a replay. If you haven't already, please make sure to smash a like and subscribe on. Help us get to 250 likes by the end of the live show here in my replay verse. If you guys could help us get to 350 to 450, that'd be absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for doing exactly that. So, before we talk about Juan Soto, because this is going to be a bit of a drag, not a drag, but we have a lot to talk about with Soto in a second on the teams he's been meeting, not named the Mets, and what's the latest on the Mets' pursuit of Soto's services. I do just have to tell you all briefly about our amazing sponsor that you guys know all very well at BetUS. BetUS has you covered with all your sports betting needs, everybody. And of course, as I'm trying to show you BetUS, they just decide to log me out. That's cool. That's fine. All right, let's do that then. Annoying, but that's fine. We will chug through it. Okay, guys, as you can see here, when we look at BetUS, these are my latest picks that I placed with them as of tonight, folks, and they are the following. It's a two-leg parlay that you guys, I hope you tailed if you saw the Jose Siri initial breaking news video earlier today. The New York Rangers money line outright in their late game tonight against Vancouver Canucks. Former New York Ranger turned Vancouver Canuck JT Miller, who I've always been a nice fan of, is sadly without the Canucks now for a period of time because of personal matters, so I hope everything's okay with JT Miller and his family. I'm thinking of him for hockey fans that are aware on that situation. It's very unfortunate to hear today. But because Miller isn't playing, I do obviously like the Rangers' odds more of winning that game. So I got the Rangers money line and the Edmonton Oilers outright. Their game has already started there. That's a two-leg parlay, 20 to win, roughly 50. So roughly 70 actually total. And all you guys got to do is head over to betus.com.pa today to get in on the action with picks just like this by using Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125% bonus on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. And thank you guys so much in advance for hearing me out and checking out our amazing sponsor as always. Rose, you know, the nose is running a little bit. We got some post-nasal drip. A normal cold is kicking my butt right now, but I appreciate you asking plenty. And thank you so much again for all the support, everybody. So now let's hop back to this, and I do apologize for my intro video running. Again, if I didn't have a hiccup like that, I'm clearly doing something wrong, because that tends to be the MO here in our live streams. But all right, let's talk about Mr. Juan Soto, because we got plenty to talk about there. And let's go down to initially the comments that we heard that we saw earlier today from, I'm actually going to pull, was going to pull it up separately from my ex, but that's fine. I'll pull it up from Foul Territory because they were initial source, so I'll give them a shout out for it. Let's see what Ken Rosenthal, probably the most accurate reporter in Major League Baseball, not named Jeff Passan. Again, Ken's been wrong about things in years past. I also heavily disagree with a lot of Ken Rosenthal's opinions, like personal opinions, when evaluating certain players and situations, even with the Padres throughout the year. He just has said some really out-of-pocket things, in my opinion, that I heavily disagree with. But when it comes to reporting, Ken is pretty much towards the tippity top of the list of the guys who have it right year in and year out to the best of their ability. And this is Ken Rosenthal's latest thoughts on the Mets and their pursuit of Juan Soto.
Juan go. So
Please, so we can stop talking about this every day.
Soto's been meeting with all of the teams. I actually do think, Ken, that this is not going to drag on for a while. I think they've been very efficient picking a day to meet with each particular team, setting up, conversations, and then eventually an offers. So I listened to Fair Territory, of course, from the show that was released yesterday. But adding on, is it as simple as highest bidder wins, and it's likely Steve Cohen?
That is, to me, the most likely scenario. Now, as I said on Fair Territory yesterday, strange things happen in free agency, and you don't always anticipate where a player might go. And I used two examples yesterday, too, that I remember most from my career. Albert Pujols to the Angels in 2011 and Zach Greinke to the Diamondbacks in 2000.
I just want to stop the video for a second. Roy Estrada, I appreciate the support, my friend, but no, you were wrong, my man. Ken Rosenthal was not the original person who said Ohtani on a plane to Toronto last offseason. Never going to forget that. That's everyone's least favorite reporter, not in the sense of personality, because he's a great guy. I met him. Again, nothing personal against him, but he is not an MLB reporter. He is an MLB talking head and an analyst at best, and that's John Morosi there of MLB. John Morosi is the one who famously had the most coveted player in Major League history going to the wrong team wrong. He couldn't have done it worse, saying that Ohtani was, heading to Toronto. That was basically a done deal, all these things, when he was never even flying there. So no, the man that we can blame for that, and will continue to, because in my opinion, having something wrong of that magnitude should, in my opinion, warrant not necessarily a career change, but some type of discipline. But we just don't do that in today's media, because it's all about being first. It's never about being right. And sadly, it's so saturated in that space with everyone across the land, not just the major networks, but everyone else involved, that they're just going to let it pass. But no, John Morosi was the one who famously had that wrong. Roy, okay, fair enough. But again, realize that went in hand with Morosi, went directly in hand. D-Mac, thank you for the donation too. You believe that BS that Cohen said he'd pay $50 million more? I don't think it's complete BS. No, because you have to. It's a simple answer to, if the Mets paid $50 million more for Juan Soto's services than anyone else, all that essentially means is the Mets would pay one more additional year on the contract at least $50 million AAV than the next team. So when you understand it from that context, when it's separate the two, it's just one additional year. Because his average annual value is going to be anywhere from 50 to 60 plus million per year for 13 to 15 years. That is where Michael Kay went in hand with what he's heard around the league. And that's why I do think, to an extent, that likely is true, because I could see the Mets going to realm on not only giving the biggest payday, but the longest term for Juan Soto and his services.
2015. Those were shocking signings. I don't know that we've had one at that level in recent years. I guess when Semien and Seager went to the Rangers the same day, that was pretty surprising, but it wasn't at that level. So I don't rule out, one, the Yankees retaining Soto, two, the field, any other team, may it be the Phillies or any other club, taking a real run and maybe even signing him. But it just seems to me that Scott Boris's goal, Juan Soto's goal, is to get the most money, to make a precedent-setting deal. And that is entirely their right. It's what Soto worked for. It's why he turned down $440 million for 15 years from the Nationals a few years back, to get to the open market and establish his true value. So who's the guy best positioned to give him that? In my view, it's Cohen. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to end up that way, but if I were a betting man, that's the way I would bet.
I apologize, everybody. I just realized I'm muted. Sorry about that. So to just piggyback off of what Ken was saying here, and I appreciate you guys spamming in the chat that I was muted. That's funny. Ken Rosenthal sharing his opinion from what he's heard around the league to everything at this point. It's true. The Mets have everything equipped to be the top suitor and the likeliest landing spot for Juan Soto. That's why, since the offseason has begun, I've said this countless times and I'll say it again, I will not only be surprised that the Mets don't land Soto, but depending on how this all plays out, I will be, like, not shocked level, but it's really going to hit harder than anything else. This will hit 10 times harder than losing out on Yamamoto an offseason ago, because there are just so many reasons as to why this makes sense based on the dollars alone of what Soto's been searching for. The fact that Soto turned down $440 million extension 3 years ago tells you all you need to know about the man and what his priority is. He wants to not only be in a big market, he likely wants to be on the East Coast, where he's had great success, has had more success on the East Coast than the West Coast throughout his years in DC, the Yanks, and hopefully now the Mets. And he loves being the face of an organization too. You know, when we talk about a team like the Dodgers, for example, as we go down here and some of my keynotes that I want to share with all you guys, let's see here, going down the list, I want to make sure I have it for each and every one of you. Bear with me one second. And this was initially when it was reported here that the sources Dodgers meet with Juan Soto tomorrow, as Feinstein has reported. Yes, it'd be absurd for them to throw out a massive contract after landing Ohtani and Yamamoto. And listen, not that Soto can't land with the Dodgers, because anything's possible at the end of the day. Maybe the Dodgers do somehow, some way land him because he's like, okay, I'll accept deferred payments. I'm going to be Kevin Durant. We're going to do a Warriors situation here. You guys just won the championship now. Even though I've already won a chip, I'm going to come here and try to dominate with you guys for the next 10, 13 years and pretty much ruin my baseball fandom and many fans in doing so. The reason why I'm so hard pressed to believe that that'll actually happen is simply because of the fact that this is a Mets team. In comparison to the Dodgers, it's East Coast versus West Coast. And it's a Dodgers team that would have Soto as their third, right around probably their second, third, fourth star. He wouldn't be the face of the LA Dodgers pretty much at any point, other than the stretches where he would dominate. And even with the Yankees, he wasn't as much of a face as maybe he'd even like, knowing Aaron Judge took the spotlight like the regular season merchant that he is, and as a surprise absolutely nobody, when it comes to stepping up in big games, Aaron Judge was nowhere to be found. If only he would take notes from his buddy Giancarlo Stanton, who's quite literally the polar opposite of the two. Stanton only steps up in postseason play, and that's why I'm honestly envious of the Yankees having Giancarlo Stanton. If you're saying, Wardy, why is that? It's because even though Stanton struggles to stay healthy, when he's healthy for playoff time, by God, he's literally one of, if not the best bat you could want in those clutch situations. Juan Soto loves the spotlight. Juan Soto loves to lead. As great as Francisco Lindor is as a captain, there is no denying that Juan Soto would be the best player on this Mets roster right here, right now, should they land Juan Soto going to the Mets. Lindor is the better overall player when calculating defense, obviously, similar to the Ohtani debates. But when talking about an actual pure player with every facet that comes with him, Juan Soto trumps them all. And that is why, between not only the aspect of being the face of a big market club in New York again, and getting the bag you're looking for, where the Yankees are absolutely going to emphasize to an extent that we would love to bring you back, but we're going to need some wiggle room here to make sure that we can properly allocate our dollars elsewhere. You think Steve Cohen is worried about allocating dollars elsewhere for the rest of the roster? You think for even a second Steve Cohen is stressing about, oh no, what are we going to do with this rotation? What are we going to do to maximize the bullpen? Oh no. Like, are we kidding for a second? The Yankees have been doing this for years under Steinbrenner. They have been stubborn. The reason why they fell short in the dance is because they didn't know fundamental baseball to smack them across the face, because they decided to still play DJ LeMahieu's and the Anthony Rizzos of the world. It's because they have no depth in their lineup outside of a fantastic playoff stand-in, one good game by Judge, and Juan Soto leading the way. They were lifeless. What makes you think, Yankees fans, that if you bring back Juan Soto, you're going to get all the balance around them right? Could have happened, sure. I'm not saying it can't. But if we're basing what recent history has shown us, everything, and I mean everything, favors the Mets here when evaluating exactly that. It makes simply no sense to me whatsoever how you can look at this Mets team and think that they won't sign 2, 3 plus starters, maybe trade for one as well. Bolster the bullpen, and add at least another piece or two on the offensive end, more for depth than anything else. What makes you think that the Mets would go half-assed in an offseason where they put all their eggs in one basket for Juan Soto and don't do anything else? This is not, and I mean this is not, the Wilpon Ran Mets. This is Steve Cohen. who has not even been able to go scorched earth in an offseason the way he's wanted because the MLB has penalized him from the start. He comes into Major League Baseball and they give him a 90% tax rate we call the Cohen tax because of Steve. But when the Dodgers spend $1.2 billion this past offseason, Manfred and everyone else in Co isn't complaining. Why? Because the Dodgers are marketable. They want to see LA win because they've been a dominant team but hasn't won anything outside of a Mickey Mouse reign in 2020 in a number of years. They finally got that reign by spending first and foremost. You think Steve Cohen wasn't taking notes? You think Steve Cohen didn't look at the Dodgers doing lateral moves 2 off seasons ago, allowing Trey Turner to walk, knowing that they were going to go scorch earth for Ohtani and Yamamoto off season later to make sure that they weren't denied, when they also needed Ohtani to be there to heavily influence Yamamoto even going there in the first place? What makes you think Steve Cohen is not going to go out and do what we have been dying for since he became owner? He spent big and short-term aspects on JV, on Scherzer, long-term aspects, Edwin Diaz to an extent, Brandon Nimmo to an extent, etc. He's shelled out the dollars plenty, but it needs to be the right fit. Juan Soto is the right fit. He is such a right fit that it's hard to fathom him not being a part of this team next year. I'm not saying that he's a slam dunk to be a Met, but holy shit, like, I'm just so confident in Steve's ability here that if the Mets don't land him, it's because Soto's just being stubborn and doesn't want to be here. Because it won't be about the money. It ain't going to be about the money. It is not going to be about the money. So we hear all the Dodgers are going to go and meet with Juan Soto. We got people freaking out. Again, roughly 9,000 likes on this tweet from Alden Gonzalez because Dodgers fans thinking that, oh my goodness gracious, we're going to land another star without a problem. Maybe you do land Juan Soto. But until it happens, by God, I don't see it happening. The Philadelphia Phillies are, in my opinion, a bigger threat to land Juan Soto. As many of you guys know, the Philadelphia Phillies have made it known over the past couple days that they intend to meet Juan Soto as well. This shouldn't come as a surprise. The Phillies have been in on Soto for at least the past year and a half now. This goes back to similar to the Mets. When you're getting beat up by a phenom from the Nationals and Juan Soto for a couple of years, you want that man on your team. The Phillies, who acquired Bryce Harper, and the first year that Harper lands with the Phillies and says, I can't wait to bring back a championship to DC, as he fumbled and said that accidentally as first presser after officially signing with the Phillies. Juan Soto, as a rook for the most part, brings them a World Series there in 2019. Then we see Trey Turner, former National, that won a World Series there with Juan Soto. He lands with the Phillies. So there are some things going in Philly's favor. They not only have a great friend in Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, who's definitely a nice guy to build a relationship with and to be teammates with. They're going to have to shell out some salary. And Nick Castellanos, for example, they want to trade Alec Boehm, that we know. They also have 3 investors that helped invest multiples of millions into the organization. That's cute. That's funny. That must suck to have 3 separate investors just to give you guys a chance against Soto when Steve Cohen's like, I'm sorry, where do I sign? That's the difference here, all right? Another thing, on top of it all, the dynamic in Philly and its market is not the same as New York. And if there's one thing that Juan Soto seemed to appreciate greatly this past year, it was dominating in a bigger market than he's ever been in before. Not to denounce Philly fandom, because their fans, while I despise them, are great at showing up for the Phillies. They're always showing up at Citizens Bank Park. It's a batter's park, and they have a lot of success there in doing so, rightfully so. But it's night and day in the market still. It's night and day. Again, they don't even touch each other. So when you look at the aspects that come with being in a big market and being a leader of a franchise, from a player standpoint, not so much from a captain standpoint, because that's Lindor, but from an overall player standpoint, the spotlight for Juan is destined to still be in New York, which is why I will be very surprised if he, either doesn't sign with the Mets or doesn't go back to the Yankees. I think that's one or the other. It's hard to believe otherwise right now, just for so many obvious reasons. So, would any fan out there that's genuinely concerned, for example, that, oh my goodness gracious, this Mets team doesn't stand a chance now that the Phillies are getting involved, that, oh my God, the big bad Dodgers are here. No. Listen. Anything can happen at the end of the day, but from everything we know to this point, it's pretty much just common sense right now. Why don't you have confidence in Steve Cohen? And for anyone saying, oh, well, Steve Cohen hasn't landed one massive contract since landing with the Mets. Okay, so we're just going to ignore how massive it was at the time when they landed Scherzer. You guys were all shaking in your boots with excitement when it happened, so don't act like you weren't. When the Mets landed Justin Verlander, everyone was ecstatic, and then some, for all the same reasons, so don't act like you weren't. When the Mets brought back Brandon Nimmo in a snap of a finger, everyone was relieved and was so grateful that happened. When the Mets brought back Edwin Diaz, even on an overpay, overpay. Everyone was ecstatic that it happened. Starling Marte on an overpay. We were very happy about that when that initially happened as well, even though we knew it would age like milk in a couple of years, and it unfortunately kind of has, even though Marte had a respectable 2024 campaign. Are we going to ignore the man throwing over $300 million out when he's sipping a freaking martini or whatever he's doing in Hawaii on vacation around Christmas there for Carlos Correa? And if it wasn't for Correa's cooked ankle, which the Mets had literally north of 20 doctors check out his everything that you need to see on the imaging for his leg ankle area to say, hey, we shouldn't invest this much money in him or term. If that didn't happen, Carlos Correa is a Met on a massive long-term contract. And let's not forget, what is the first big move that Steve Cohen did with the Mets? Inking Lindor long-term. Stop acting like that wasn't important. The guy didn't even play a game with the Mets yet, and he became the highest-paid shortstop in Major League Baseball history. When Steve Cohen hadn't even been an owner for one official game for the Mets yet. But we're going to disregard all these things. And, oh, Steve, he hasn't showed out the dollars when we needed it most. You're just an idiot at that point. Genuinely, like you're not paying attention. All you need to do is just add them all up. Understand the context. Understand the context of players available. The Mets gave a guy who never pitched in Major League Baseball the highest contract for a pitcher in Major League history last offseason in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But because he took the same exact offer from the LA Dodgers for obvious reasons, we're just supposed to act like, oh my goodness, Stevie can't go out and spend. The one thing the Mets have in their favor more than any other team in Major League Baseball is simply their spending. And now you add in a great front office, an exciting young manager, and a team that was 2 games shy of facing this same Juan Soto in the World Series. Oh, my only wish was that the Mets got to the dance and won it all, because that would have been all they needed to do to prove that they're the better team than the Yankees for Soto. They were. The Mets put up a better run than the Yankees did between the Dodgers, between the two. The Mets were a better team than the Yankees throughout the course of the regular season. The Mets were a more exciting team, a more resilient team, and were not reliant on one man solely to win the games consistently. Now, I emphasize this. Yes, Lindor carried us plenty. That's why he had a broken back towards the end of the year, because my back would be hurting too as much as Lindor carried this Mets team from May 30th on. The point still stands. They had balance throughout their lineup, and they got a lot of offensive production from guys that you initially wouldn't have thought of, including guys like Jose Iglesias, among others. So, guys and gals, I definitely want to know your thoughts on this, and Frank Major brings up a point that I've emphasized a lot, and I'll say it again. Wardy, why would the Mets shell out so much money for Juan Soto when his defense sucks? Simple answer for you, buddy. Juan Soto was an over 8 WAR player, meaning he himself accounted for right around 8+ wins himself alone for the New York Yankees last season per wins above replacement. Juan Soto was 80% better than the average batter in baseball last season at a 180 WRC plus, which is weighted runs created plus. 80% better than the average batter in baseball. Who gives a rat's ass if he has subpar defense and right? If he's going to be that impactful a player, no less. His defense is never going to be a liability to the extent of it hurting his offensive prowess and upside. His offense is always going to trump his defense. And for any time that you get frustrated about that defense, that is where the pickup in Jose Siri comes into play. Jose Siri is literally arguably the best defensive outfielder in Major League Baseball for center field. Why? Not just because of his electric grabs, but he has tremendous range in the 99th percentile in speed. You don't think Jose Siri is going to go and back up Juan Soto plenty and right, which he will inevitably do? You don't think that he's going to go out and left sometimes and rob WardyNYM of some catches because he's just going to be there all the time? These things go in hand with another. One person commented on my video earlier today saying, this kind of feels like a precursor move for Juan Soto. And to an extent, you're not wrong, because you want to make sure that your center field defense is as short up as possible, knowing that you will have a somewhat defensive liability in Juan Soto. But again, the defensive liability means nothing when that bat is everything. Barry Bonds, was he known for his defense? I don't think so. Was Big Papi known for his defense? I don't think so. What did these guys do? Fantastic things. Fantastic things when looking at pure power in Major League Baseball. Huge home run hitters. Why are you not sold on Juan Soto? 26 years of age. A decade from now, he's 36. That's like Starling Marte's age right now, guys. 13 years from now, all right, he's 39. Who gives a shit? You buy out the final years of his contract if you need to. You give him the Bonilla treat. Like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. That's what we need to grasp. That's why there isn't one Dodgers fan or anyone in the organization right now. No one should not be complaining. Wait. So no one should not be complaining. I'm confused what you meant, Mocha. Enlighten me on what you meant to say there. I apologize. I know he was a good defender in his early career. Yes, that's before the roids began and he was still in Pittsburgh. You get the point I'm trying to make, though, Michael. You know what I'm trying to say here. Yes. I get what you're saying on Bonds, but I'm talking about Bonds and his peak steroid the hell up there in San Fran. That's what I'm trying to refer to. I'm not referring to the ankle gloves, but of course they're going to use that against me. It's fine. Whatever. It is what it is. I already said it. What I'm trying to explain here is that bat is so significant, it doesn't matter what defensive downside you're going to have because everything is going to balance out. Now, if this was a situation where, say, Juan Soto was a little bit above a league average hitter coming off of a massive year, but you knew that was a massive year in a walk year, like Willie Adames, for example, then we have a different discussion. That is not the case, however. This is a generational type hitter that proved time and time again his impact throughout not only the regular season, but in postseason play. The guy proved it as a teenager, his ability to dominate in the World Series against the Houston Astros. The same way he's proved it now at the young age of 25, turning 26 this past year, dominating postseason play and single-handedly helping the Yankees get to the dance with that massive bomb there. What was it, the Grand Slammy, right, or so, against the Cleveland Guardians to send them home. Again, these are things that only special talents do. And you need to have guys that not only check off the boxes of short and long-term bill, which Soto does. You also need to land guys that can handle the big market, which Soto does. And you also need guys that can handle the pressure, which Soto does. There is not one thing that you can criticize Juan Soto about outside of maybe you getting your little you-know-what's in a twist because you don't like the Soto shuffle because, again, maybe you're just one of those fans that doesn't like fun in baseball. Or maybe you're one of those that are like, you know what? Defense is everything to me. That's all I care about. That's fine. But while you care about defense, I'm going to care about a team trying to do their best to win each and every year. And how they do their best to win each and every year is to have a balance of these things. If you have a net negative in the corner, you have to have a net positive in center. That's what the Mets are trying to do here. It's as simple as that. Now, thank you, Brandon. Thank you. I appreciate the clarity there. Yes, in regards to Bonds. I'm not denying that Bonds wasn't a very good defender at a point in his career, but the one I was referencing is by no means the one that was being thrown at me when we were talking about it. Let's see here. Going up the list just for a second. How about Mets sign Bregman and trade for Vladdy? Not going to happen. Mets aren't going to sign Bregman. And Vladdy, I don't see getting traded either. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to do it, honestly. Moonshadow, thank you so much for the $10 holla. Nando, I don't think you got to worry about that. You know, listen, if he banned you, he's probably got his little what's in a twist about the fact that the Juan Soto reality is maybe not in his favor. You know what I mean? Either way, it's fine. You're on the better platform anyways, my man. Moonshadow with the $10 holla says, drop the mic on Soto, Wardy. Enough said in my best The Rock impersonation. It doesn't matter what you think. Mets doubters on Soto. 100%. 100%. That's how I feel. And is there a bias with this as someone who's been dying for Soto since he made his debut with the Nationals? Absolutely. But the reason why there's bias and the reason why universally the vast majority of Mets fans I've interacted with are in favor of Soto is because we've watched this kid since day one. You watched him. I've watched him. We've all seen him kick our ass left, right, and center during his time in D.C. We saw him have some big moments in his short stint in San Diego, even though things didn't go right in his final year there. We saw what he did against the Mets, even with the Yankees. The guy is just so good. He's so good. He checks off every box, and then you add in the fun aspect too. The Dominican aspect. I love the fact, though, he's a Hispanic player. That the vibes it brings is electric. We've seen, going back to the 2021 Subway Series, Mets fans jumping on the dugout with the Puerto Rican flags as Lindor hit his third effing bomb right in the face of Giancarlo Stanton in a tremendous Subway Series. I know Puerto Ricans and Dominicans aren't the same, so please don't think that I'm trying to classify them, but Hispanic baseball players in general bring a vibe and aura and excitement to them that a lot of other players you just don't see with across Major League Baseball. And to not only have Lindor, and to not only have Alvarez, and to not only have Vientos, and now to a lesser degree on the player, but more so on the personality, Jose Siri, that Soto knows plenty about, to then bring in Juan Soto. It would be electric. It would be electric. Like, are you kidding me? The ROI, the return on investment for Steve Cohen would be there right away. Between not only the sales on the jerseys, the tickets, the games selling out constantly, and everything else in between. The guy is fan-effing-tastic. He just checks off everything that you would want for the shorter long-term bill. And I'll stand by that. If the Mets don't land Soto, I'm going to be beyond heartbroken. And I'm just going to want to find out the context as to why that's happening. More than anything. Let's just acknowledge how rigged the Gold Gloves... Oh, I know. He was a Gold Glove finalist, which is an absolute joke, Ryan. That was with the Padres, I believe, right? I don't know. He was a Gold Glove finalist for the Padres when he had such a bad defensive year. You want to know the weird thing about Juan Soto that I don't think gets talked about enough? Juan Soto's last year with the Nationals, he was really good defensively. Like, for no reason. And I'm like 99% sure about this. But I'm going to prove it right here to you guys. Hold on. And then, guys, we're going to wrap up the Soto discussion in a minute. From there, we're going to talk about qualifying offer deadline, what happened with the Mets there. They're 40-man, and I'm going to answer some of your questions before we wrap it up. Just look at those freaking sexy nuts. Look at that shit. This is a video game. This is the closest thing to a video game not named Shohei Ohtani in the league, guys. Like, this is not fair. 100, 99, 98, 99, 99. Ignore the 65. 94, 94, 98, 68, 79. 100 in the walk percentage. 98th in arm value. Screw the OAA. Now let's go back to what? 2021. This is what was so nuts about Juan Soto. His final year with the Nationals. Human highlight reel offensively and defensively. I don't know what changed so much. I'm assuming it just changed because of where he transitioned from corner outfield to corner outfield. Because I know that when he was traded from the Nationals to the Padres, I think he went from one corner to the other, which I think was in part the problem. But this is Juan Soto's 2021 percentiles. 88th percentile and outs above average. So don't act like Soto can't have defensive upside. He certainly can. He's shown it throughout his career. Is it something that we should bank on? Is it something that we think is going to be a consistent thing? No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. But it's to further prove that he has not been this defensive liability constantly throughout his career the way that some of you guys lead him to believe. He was literally lights out that year, and I will never forget that. Since then, not so much. 2022, first year with the Padres. He's literally in the I've never seen one player drop drastically as much as Soto did defensively from the 88th percentile in 2021 to the worst percentile a year later. Then we look at 2023, third percentile, 2024, 14th percentile. So again, he's working his way up a little bit. It's insane though. It's absolutely insane. Guys, before we get on to the final things that we have, our final two segments, along with answering your comments, if you guys haven't already, please make sure to smash a like and subscribe on. It's greatly appreciated. It's the easiest and best way to support the channel outside of donating, which I never ask, but it's always appreciated. So thank you guys so much for endlessly doing that, as you guys have continued to do. I want to give a big shout out briefly to my man, Dave Kaplitz, who's a fantastic member here on the show. Shadow Moon Shadow, great member as well. Dave, who's a longtime friend of mine as well. We go way back. He's been following me since day one. Has been beyond generous, not only between donations, but always sending things my way, even to my son Shay at 5 months of age today. So happy birthday to my son Shay for his monthly birthday, at least, because we're counting each month, obviously, like young parents would. But Dave was so kind enough to tell me, hey, Wardy, go to your P.O. box. I sent you something. I go to my P.O. box, and what do I find? I find this, which is really, really cool. Dave, thank you so much. He sends me a Francisco Lindor Bowman card that we see from the 2023 season. Very cool. It's in the case as well, so it's like perfect condition as well. Dave, thank you so much for this. I'm going to put this on the corner behind me where I have a bunch of the other Mets-related things outside of Grimace that you guys see. Actually, I can show you guys full-fledged by just doing this, for example. Ignore the bottom graphic because it looks stupid. But as you guys see beside me, Dave has sent both these my way, actually. Both these dugout mugs, which are sick. Mets relay dugout mugs. I'm pretty sure he sent this my way. Francisco Lindor bobblehead that I got that you can grow grass out of. And everything else. I got Jacob deGrom bobbleheads back there from his 2 Cy Youngs. I got a bunch of signed baseballs from Tom Seaver, Doc. I'm trying to think on the others there. I have Michael Conforto ball, who was my favorite Met during his time there, and a couple others too. I was gifted those by followers of mine. Thank you guys so much again for that, to everyone who sent those my way. But now I'm going to add the card there. So thank you so much for that, Dave. Really, really kind of you, my man. I'm actually going to put it right there, right under the big bobblehead Lindor. So that is where he's going to go, right next to Grimace. And we'll see if Grimace makes a return next season or not, or if that was just a 2024 run for the Mets and nothing more. But all right, guys, let's get into our final segments here. Then we'll continue on. What would I do if Soto signs with LA? If Soto signs with LA, I would genuinely question my fandom as a fan. Like, I would genuinely question my baseball fandom at that point, because we are becoming the NBA in the sense that you have a team on paper that is more star loaded than any other in the game, and the Dodgers, when healthy as is, they're expected to land Roki Sasaki until proven otherwise, and then you bring in Juan Soto. Like, it's not only not fair, but it really hurts the game in my opinion, because there isn't enough of a balance from the on paper talent with these guys with other organizations. Like, the fact that the Dodgers and the Rockies share the same NL West division is a joke, for one, right? It's just insane how polar opposite they can be. But if that happened, no one's going to complain about it, right? No one in the media is. Not that it's terrible for the game, but as soon as the Mets start spending money, oh no, they can't do it. Steve Cohen's terrible for the game of baseball, said all you pieces of shit out there that have no clue what you're talking about. I'll never watch baseball, says Ethan. I'll cover the Mets, obviously. I hope that they can still prevail, but by God. Like, what? There's only so much you can do at one point when you land a superstar at essentially every position. But all right, guys. Enough on Soto. That was Wardy's rant. Another rant on the day. All right. A couple things I want to share with you. Also, shout out to my guy, Daniel Wexler. Daniel's a good follow on MetsX. And he posted Brandon Sproat named runner-up for best 23-year-old prospect in baseball. So congratulations to Brandon Sproat. Very, very cool. For those who don't know Brandon Sproat, he's a high riser with the Mets organization, a flame-throwing right-hander that's expected to impact this rotation as soon as next season, potentially. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to blow out my nose, and we're going to get into the lays here. Someone said, Wardy, if that happens, you're going to have to just talk about the Knicks at that point. Funny enough, I do talk about the Knicks on the side. I cover the Knicks on average of 1 or 2 games a week on the Knicks Media YouTube channel that my man Richie Malora, a great friend of mine who hosts that platform. Check it out if you guys haven't already. He's been covering the past couple games because I've been under the weather and post-surgery. It wasn't as easy for me to get out some Knicks content, but I will be unveiling more Knicks content either later this week or next week there for the Knicks Media YouTube channel. And on just a guest front, I will be live tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. I'll be joining my man Richie and TD Fins Talk for their daily Wake Up and Ball live sports show segment that they do from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. every single day on the Roundtable Sports YouTube channel. Again, that is a Roundtable Sports YouTube channel. They do a live show every morning going over all the latest, not only in the NFL, but across all major sports. And they're going to have me on to break down the latest on Juan Soto and Major League Baseball, everything that's going on this offseason as a guest spot. So if you guys want to check me on the early morning tomorrow, that won't be on this platform, but will be on the Roundtable Sports YouTube channel. Highly implore you guys to check out that segment for all my early birds that will have the chance to chime in and tune into it. But all right. Let's continue to break this down, everybody. RZ, how you doing, my man? Happy to have you in here. Greatly appreciate it. But all right, we did see today, folks, which shouldn't come as a surprise. This was expected. But Pete Alonso, Sean Manaea, and Luis Severino have all declined their qualifying offers. Now, all these guys are looking for big paydays. And of the three, I have to be completely honest with you guys, of these three guys, I don't know who's the most likely to return to the Mets. I want it to be Alonso, but I genuinely don't know. I think the priority of Soto is so great, and knowing that Alonso is not a priority to the same degree, because the Mets, realistically, I know Mets fans don't want to hear this, but the Mets can realistically replace Alonso with either Vientos at first or a shorter-term option, should they say pivot to a Christian Walker with someone to trade market, at least for the short end for the next couple years, they can do that and still be a better team next year than what they were this past year, because Juan Soto is leaps and bounds a better player than Pete Alonso will ever be throughout his career. And that's not a slight on Alonso at all, but let's just put the simple numbers in place. Pete Alonso, when calculating overall value on millions of dollars since he made his MLB debut in 2019 per Fangraphs, has a total value of right around 131 to 135 million or so. Total value as a player. Juan Soto, in just this past season alone for the New York Yankees, accounted for over $65 million in total value as a player. Throughout his career, since making his debut in 2018, he has accounted for roughly $300 million, over twice the amount of Pete Alonso when looking at pure value of a player. What does that tell you? Similar to Alonso. You know, Soto and Alonso aren't necessarily known for their defense, even though Alonso's made some really nice scoops throughout the years. We're very aware of that, always putting the body in play. Soto is always going to be leaps and bounds the better player between the two. And on top of that, he's younger by 3.5 years at least. So this is not a slight on Alonso at all. We love him for being the homegrown talent. We love him for being our homegrown king. We love him for being a tremendous playoff hero after having a really unfortunate, underwhelming regular season, dealing with a high pressure. It still wouldn't be a lateral move if the Mets land Soto and don't bring back Alonso. For the simple fact, Alonso wasn't an 8-WAR player for the Mets last year, nor will he ever be. Now, Alonso and Soto together, I think, would be disgustingly good, yes. And can that happen? Absolutely. But it's not a guarantee to happen. So if it comes to picking and choosing, if the Mets find themselves in that predicament, they're going to be taking Alonso every single day of the week. So would I love to see Alonso return? Yes. But do I think it's a slam dunk to happen? Sadly, I do not. In the case of Sean Manaea and Luis Severino, the Mets did a fantastic job by Severino actually opting out of the QO, and here's why. As you see from MLB executive Burner there on X, he had a great point. Mets David Stearns looks very smart today. Severino declining the qualifying offer will net a 4th-round pick. For $28.25 million in 2024, the Mets got nearly 400 innings, playoffs included, from Manaea and Severino, 4.9 combined Fangraphs WAR, one's above replacement, and will net 2 draft picks of the players signed elsewhere. That is what makes David Stearns such a savvy pobo. He did 2 short-term signings, had them both pitch ace caliber and parts throughout the season, especially Sean Manaea, and should neither return, the Mets are going to get compensation for exactly that. Severino wants a multi-year deal. I would love to bring back Sevy, as I would love to bring back Manaea. And we're basing things on age, you're in favor of Severino. And we're basing things on peak, on what you'd potentially be getting. There's more appeal, I think you can argue with Manaea, but the big question is, will teams properly adjust with that arm slot angle heading into next season? Should the Mets bring back Sean? And will the run that we saw in 2024 kind of be more of an anomaly from what we would be getting in 2025, 2026, 2027, should they sign him to, say, a 3-year contract at least? So I would love for all 3 to come back with the Mets, but I'd be surprised if more than 1 came back, and I'd be happy if 2 came back. I do not at all foresee all 3 to come back, unless I'm proven wrong. So that's the latest on the Mets when evaluating the qualifying offer, everybody. All 3 have declined as expected. Alonso's looking for a contract north of $200 million. In the case of Severino, he's going to be looking for a multi-year deal. Sean Manaea, both of these guys are looking for, I'd imagine, Taijuan Walker-esque contracts that he landed with the Philadelphia Phillies a couple years ago. Michael Wacha got a very nice contract that we saw as well from the Kansas City Royals there, staying put. Good for him, I believe. But that's the latest there, everybody. Final thing I want to share on Jose Siri, which I thought was pretty neat. And this comes from Cespedes Family Barbecue. These guys are great. They have a weekly podcast that they do with Yahoo Sports, I believe. Here's a picture with me and newest Mariner at the time, because this goes back to the 2022 season. Jose Siri from the Dominican Winter League. Dude is one of a kind personality, as high energy as they come, a true character. He also told me, and I quote, "If I think a pitcher is racist, I bat flip on purpose." So granted, I don't think we should just think someone's racist and then make a decision. I think we should know for certain if that person's racist based on either derogatory, sadly, really bad remarks that they make or their actions. But what I will say is, as someone who's anti-racism like anyone else with common sense and life in general, I like that. I think that's hilarious. So, as we get into next season, if Jose Siri has a multi-home run game and he pimps the shit out of both of them, they might just go in hand with that pitcher's viewpoint on the racial front. Whether it's going to hold true or not, I'm not sure. But that's a very interesting remark from one Jose Siri, now to New York Metropolitan. This is when he had his short stint with the Reds, Mariners, Houston Astros, Tampa Bay Rays, and now your New York Mets. But let's get into the latest on the 40-man roster, because as Will Salmon, who does a fantastic job on the beat for the Mets through The Athletic, stated earlier, the Mets aren't expected to make any 40-man roster additions before the Rule 5 protection deadline. What does this mean? Mike Vasil, Dominic Hamill, Rainer Suarez, Luke Ritter are 4 key guys who have been doing either well or just notable in the organization the past couple of years, who are no longer potentially going to be part of the organization if they're going to be picked up there in the Rule 5 draft. Now, it's not a guarantee that these guys will be picked up, obviously, but they're being exposed. So now let's get into the reasons for this. And let's start with Mike Vasil and Dominic Hamill. Dominic, who's a friend of the platform, we've actually had on the channel a couple years ago, right after he won Mets Minor League Pitcher of the Year award back after the 2022 campaign, if I'm not mistaken. Dom Hamill had a brutal 2024 campaign in AAA, posting a 6.75 ERA or so. Mike Vasil also posted a 6+ ERA in AAA this year, both of which have really struggled to find consistency in their game at the AAA level. That's been a common problem for a lot of Mets prospect pitchers in recent years, not just them, but they've definitely stuck out like a sore thumb over the past year and a half. Not Ranger Suarez, if I said that already. Not Ranger. Let me make sure I have his name right here. What is it? I forget what his first name is for Suarez. I'm blanking right now. But no less, Suarez, who is a pitcher in the Mets organization as well, is the most notable here in my opinion. And I honestly think he is the guy that will hopefully, again, God willing, not be picked up. But he might be the most enticing to pick up, and here's why. Suarez posted a sub-4 ERA across 119 innings in Double-A for Binghamton this year with the Rumble Ponies. He struggled mightily in 2 starts at the AAA level as a last-minute call-up to end the season for him, but he looked pretty sharp and had some solid outings for the Mets. That was very impressive to see. Luke Ritter, that a lot of Mets fans were dying and calling for, oh, he needs to be called up now for some second base opportunities or what have you. Luke Ritter's about to be 28. He doesn't have defensive upside, and he's never played a game at the major league level. No one should be shocked that a north of a 30-year-old is going to be not considered by the Mets. And the fact that the Mets didn't even consider Dominic Hamill or Mike Vasil even as innings eaters at points throughout the 2024 campaign tells you all you need to know about how David Stearns likely views said prospects. Nothing personal against them, but there's a reason as to why they're not being prioritized or not being protected. And because of that reason, we're going to see at least one of these guys likely parted with. So we'll see what happens on that front. So that's the latest on the Mets 40-man there, and that's protection for the Rule 5 draft that will be coming in December. And that's the latest I got for you, Metsland, everybody. That has officially done it for the show. So as I promised you, even though we're an hour and 20 in this one, I'm going to spend at least the next 5+ minutes answering as many questions as I can from each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. So if you guys got specific comments, questions for me that we haven't touched on already, by all means, relay in the live show right here, right now in the comments down below. Let us know your biggest takeaway from our latest Big Mets update segment as we do every single week, and we'll probably do another one. If not tomorrow, if, say, breaking news happens, and certainly Thursday after we find out the MVP results. But I definitely want to see whatever comments, questions, concerns you guys got for me before I head out for the night. Going to blow my nose out one more time, and then we're going to continue, folks. Onsell 1961. Something that he's consistently done very well is by doing everything wrong in the chat with false predictions and hope. And trollness. All three go in hand. Somebody's going to pick up Luke Ritter. It's possible. Good for them if they do it. What if Soto's another Jason Bay? I'm not even going to acknowledge that. Not sure if I missed it, but what do I think about the plans for pitchers? Oh, simple. Very simple answer for you. I firmly believe the Mets are going to bring back one of Shamanai or at least Severino. I think Quintana walks, but anything's possible there. I think the Mets bring back one of the two at minimum. I think they sign one or multiple of guys in the Blake Snell, Walker Buehler, Yusei Kikuchi category of talents, somewhat higher upside than others, Snell being the biggest with upside, all having one commonality that they're likely going to sign on shorter-term contracts in the 1 to 3+ year range. Then we're looking at the trade market. If the Mets say do swing and miss on some of those pitchers available in the free agent market because they are overpaid elsewhere on maybe longer term deals, then they will likely defer more towards the trade market. And that's where you have the big behemoth, which is Garrett Crochet. Then you have a more digestible trade in which what you'd be giving up, which would be one Jesus Luzardo from the Miami Marlins. You have a guy that I like a lot in Littell from the Tampa Bay Rays. I think would be a crafty back end of the rotation arm for them as well, along with other key pieces. That's the inevitable route I find the Mets going down, barring changes on the pitching front. I'm really looking forward to seeing those dominoes finally start to fall. On the bullpen end, they're going to continue to be savvy. They might sign one reliever that we all know very well, but then there's going to be a lot of reliever pickups of guys that maybe you don't know too well, you're going to have to do some homework on, and they're definitely going to stand out. Rose, thank you. Yeah, hernia surgery is getting better each day for sure. Not fun, however, just because I'm still at the point where when I cough significantly or I can't even sneeze yet. I haven't sneezed literally in like almost 2 weeks, guys, because if I try to sneeze, it hurts like hell. If you guys have had hernia surgery, you know how like it's just sore and kind of like raw in the area still. So that hasn't been fun, but thankfully I'm in a much better place than I was a week ago. So thank you for asking. What is the percentage in the Mets signing Soto? For the sake of not jinxing, I'm going to say the Mets' odds of landing Soto is at least 50%. Did I miss the Wardy stare? No, you didn't, RJ. We didn't do a Wardy stare today because we didn't need to, actually. Well, we have to do a Wardy stare next time, though. Make sure you're there. Let's see. That's why I just mentioned Bryce Miller. He'll cost an arm and brain. But here's the thing. I think a guy like Luis Castillo is more likely for the Mets than a Bryce Miller. I don't think the Mariners are inclined to give up their young, highly touted pitcher in Miller versus more of a seasoned vet in Castillo, where they probably would like to shed that salary at $75 million left on 3 years left on that deal for Castillo. He's still an ace caliber pitcher. The Mets can eat his entire contract, and because they would eat his entire contract, they would be able to give up a little bit lesser of a return in doing so. So Miller's a nice ad, don't get me wrong, but I don't think the Mariners will deal him at this point with all the club control he has. Doesn't make sense for a smaller market organization like them. What does make sense is parting ways with more of a veteran that they can shed off some key salary and still have a smack dab and good rotation without him. You think the Mets make a big trade? I do. I think the Mets make one big trade this offseason that potentially no one has an idea as to what it's going to be. Maybe 3 free agents you think the Mets will pick up and 2 trades you think the Mets will make. All right, 3 free agents I think the Mets will pick up. Well, I'm cheating a little bit, but I do think the Mets are going to bring back one of Manaea or Severino. I have a great confidence that the Mets are going to land one of Buehler or Kikuchi. I really do. Just a matter of who. But I have a lot of confidence there, because both those guys check off the boxes playing for the Mets. So does Blake Snell, but I just don't know the Snell's interest level in coming to not only the East Coast, but specifically a big market like New York. I'm not sure how that would bode. So that has yet to be determined. On the trade, Jose Iglesias reunion, I think is definitely happening for the bench on a smaller move. On the trade front, it's tough to say because the Mets aren't going to go out of their way to trade for Garrett Crochet if they basically fortify their rotation mostly throughout free agency. But if they don't, I would love a Crochet trade. But I think a far more realistic one would be, as I mentioned, a Jesus Luzardo, a Littell from, say, the Tampa Bay Rays. Because mind you, the Rays are getting Shane McClanahan back this year. You guys remember how many aces are coming back in the league this year? Shane McClanahan, Spencer Strider, just to name a few. For those that don't remember Shane McClanahan, one of the best southpaws in Major League Baseball. Former Mets draft pick. Sadly, did not go to the Mets. He went back to school, then went to the Tampa Bay Rays. And he's going to really help fortify that rotation. And the Rays turn out pitching each and every year, which is why I think Littell, who's a couple years removed as solely a reliever from the Giants, now turned as both a starter and reliever this past year with the Rays, could be a nice, sneaky pickup for the Mets for sure. Thank you, Rose. Have a great night. Cheers from Nicaragua. That's awesome, Emerson. Thank you so much for chiming in, my man. Swaggy V. He is from. Yep. That is very cool. It's not. I wouldn't say that's overlooked. I know that Vientos has said his interest in wanting to play for the country as well when evaluating the WBC, among other things. What am I hearing about Kodai Senga? He'll be all ready to go for the regular season. That's what I know about Senga. Yeah, I'm not worried about Senga at all. The Mets get Soto. What would be your expectations for him? My expectations for Soto would be eerily similar to what he did for the Yankees this past season, which is as follows. That's my expectation for Juan Soto if the Mets land him. Furthermore, call me crazy, I think Juan Soto could get back to that 300 batting average plateau with the Mets. Close to. I really do. And I think that'll go in hand with the depth that he has in the slab. Because I'm telling you, if the Mets bring back Alonso, land Soto, and fortify other areas, this lineup will be deeper than what he ever had there with the Yankees. Even with Judge and Stanton, it'll be deeper. Because Judge was a no-show in playoffs. Stanton missed drastic stretches throughout the course of the season. And they're 5 through 9, really, really labored in parts throughout the year. I think the Mets would get a lot out of Soto right away. That's what I think, truthfully. I don't think the Jose Siri signing has anything to do with Jesse Winker. Jesse never plays center field. The Mets solely got Jose Siri for center field. So don't connect the two. They're irrelevant. What is relevant is the future of Juan Soto. Because if the Mets land Juan Soto, they're probably less likely to bring back Jesse Winker because they profile similar as corner outfield lefty bats that can also DH if need be, even though Soto's going to get daily outfield reps, obviously, for the investment that you're putting into him. Winker, I would love, and I hope he returns, but I think that becomes less likely should you land Soto, personally. Does getting Siri impact us resign Winker? Nope. Also, let's see, Williams or Gilbert does good in AAA. Who's the odd man out? Worry about that when we get there. That's my answer to that, Andres. We're too premature. Do I think Cohen goes? Do you think Cohen goes to just a crazy number? I think he goes to an area no one else is going to go to. That's what I think. I think Iglesias will be back. Yeah. Which prospects do I think will get regular playing time next season? At some point, even if it's not to begin the season, I think Brandon Sproat will be in this rotation. I think Drew Gilbert has a great opportunity to get daily reps. Those are the only two I can really think of off the riff, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think Acuna is going to be guaranteed anything because the logjam the Mets still have in their infield. I don't think Jet Williams is guaranteed anything, not only because the logjam, but how we'll profile if them will be level. Yeah, I got probably Drew Gilbert and Brandon Sproat are the only guys I think have a realistic chance right now to be giving us consistent reps. Trade McNeil. Not opposed to it. I think it's definitely something that should be done. I know McNeil had a 900 OPS in the second half of the season, but I also know that even as versatile as Jeff is, there's just something about Jeff that just doesn't fit with the Mets team. That it did fit in 2019 and parts in 2022 for sure. I just don't know if it fits anymore. And this isn't personal against him, but I just don't see it. Any interest in Jordan Montgomery? Any interest in Jordan Montgomery? On a salary dump? Yeah. Assuming it would be a salary dump, right? Because was he on more than a 1-year deal with Arizona? I'm trying to think, because I'm trying to think what his contract status is. Jordan Montgomery, I think, would thrive with the Mets for sure. He's off of a terrible down year because he started the year late, coming off of a World Series hangover, but he wasn't locked in at all. I think he would be a nice pickup. I wanted Monty a year ago for sure. I wouldn't hate the idea. I don't think he's as bad as some people make him out to be, but I also wouldn't go out of my way for him necessarily either. Frank, that's okay to disagree, my friend, but home runs is not the end-all be-all. All the other numbers factor into play. Wins above replacement, WRC plus, hitting high leverage situations, runners of scoring position, 2-out hitting. Juan Soto is among the best of the best in the game today. Oh, Monty accepted the qualifying offer. Is that what happened? Makes sense, because he wasn't going to get shit otherwise. So that does make sense. Yeah, you're going to have to trade for him then on a salary dump. I mean, if the Mets are willing to eat the contract and get him for nothing, I'm not opposed to that. Otherwise, kick rocks. Guys and gals, thank you so much for watching. That is going to wrap up our live show. What big free agent would you say signs with the team first? God willing, that's Juan Soto, because I don't see the Mets landing a big-name free agent externally that isn't an in-house option that just became a free agent. Like Alonso, like Manaea, like Severino, without it being like a Soto big splash. Because I think Soto will be a big splash that happens, God willing, relatively soon over the next couple weeks, and then we can go from there. Guys, that'll do it. Thank you all so much for watching. So happy I could answer plenty of your comments, questions, and concerns. Be on the lookout. We will be live again either tomorrow or Thursday, barring changes. We'll likely have another video out because, you know, every day it's so fun during the offseason because I don't know what I'm going to talk about every single day necessarily. And then, bam, breaking news, Mets trade for Jose Siri. Awesome. We got a discussion to be had. Bam, Mets have a new report on Juan Soto. Bam, let's go and discuss it. So each day there's new news and rumors coming out, so we'll touch on them as we always do. So until then, everybody, have a fantastic rest of your day, night, evening, whenever you're watching this. I wouldn't say there's too much truth to that, Michael, at all. I think that's more in hand should the Mets officially lose out on Alonso. Until then, I'd say it's premature. Thank you guys for watching, listening, wherever you're doing it. Make sure you have a fantastic night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. This is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Have a great one.